Noisemaker is a tool inside of ZBrush that allows you to apply procedural noise to your Z-tools, creating a variety of different surface effects. So we're going to begin with our Wasteland Warrior model, and I have the subtool selected currently for the cowl. If we go into solo mode, you can see we've got the cowl here. Now, Noisemaker is found under Tool, Surface. So if we open up the Surface submenu here, we have Noise, Edit, Delete. So we're going to open up Noise. Then we're going to click Edit, and that's going to bring up the editor for this. So we'll turn off Noise Plugin, and we'll take a look at what we see by default. I'm going to click Frame, and we navigate this the exact same way that we navigate inside of ZBrush, just by clicking and dragging on the interface and rotating around. So let's go ahead and turn our strength down on this, and we'll orient the model so we can see it a bit better. Now, first off, we can adjust our noise scale, and that's just the generic noise. This is currently set to a color blend. If I take the color blend down to 0, it's not going to modulate the color at all. If I turn color blend up, it will modulate between my primary and secondary color selections here. So I can go ahead and change that to a different hue, turn it up, and we can adjust the noise further using our curve here. But we don't want to change the color, so I'm going to break this back down to 0. We have the strength of the noise. If I turn this up and down, we can change the direction if it's pushing in or out. And we can adjust the strength by masking, but we have no masking on this at this point. So what I'll do is I'll just turn the strength up and click OK. And then that will apply that noise. So you've got kind of a nice rocky texture on here. It doesn't really fit for this object, but it's a good idea of what Noisemaker does. So let's make something that's a little bit more pertinent to this bit of kit. So I'll go back to Edit, and I'm going to click Noise Plug, and this opens up an entirely different submenu. Noise Plug will open up the Noisemaker plugin. Now, the Noisemaker plugin will open up on a second window, and here. So here we have the Noisemaker menu, and from here I can select a variety of different types of noise. So for this one, I'm going to select hex tiles. Now, this will give me the parameters to change the hex tiles themselves. I can change the tile radius and the thickness in the mortar, the tile color and mortar color. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and then that's going to apply that to the mesh here. Now I've got the ability to change my plugin scale. So I'm going to turn the strength up so we can see it a bit better, and I can change the plugin scale like this. Now I have two options for projection. I can project in 3D here, and I can project into UV. So I'll turn on UV and click OK. Now this mesh has UVs applied to it that were created in UV Master. If I go to geometry and step down to my lowest subdivision level, that noise stays in place because right now it's not part of the mesh. It's just a procedural projection. And if I go to UV map, and here we go, UV map. And morph UV, you can see we actually have UVs applied to this mesh that were created in UV Master, so we can unwrap it flat. So that will allow us to use UV projection in Noisemaker. So let's go back to Surface. Let's go to Edit. And I'm going to change my plugin scale. And if we change the strength, we can push those tiles in instead of out. So I'll turn that up pretty strong. Click OK. Now you can see that we've got that hex tiling running along that surface. Now, if I want to apply this to the surface as actual geometry, I'll need to step up to a high subdivision level, so I've got the geometry to support the level of detail that it will require to capture that detail. So I'll step up to my highest subdivision level, which is 3 million polygons. Under Surface, I can click Apply to Mesh, and that will apply that to the mesh and make it actually part of the sculpture. So this is now physically part of that form. So let's switch over to a different piece. Let's go to the faceplate here. Now the faceplate is only 813,000 faces. Now again, we want to add subdivision levels so we can support the level of detail that we're about to apply. Let's go back to Noisemaker, and here we've got a lightbox button. If I click that, it opens up a variety of noisemakers that are in the lightbox. So I'll grab Noise 15. It's this nice eroded surface. And that automatically brings those settings up, but they're way too strong. So what I'll do is I'll go to Edit, And then let's adjust our strength. Let's dial that strength back just a little bit. Let's zoom in so we get a better look at this. We could invert that so it's building out, but I liked it better the other way, so let's bring it in a little bit. And then we'll focal shift the curve. And you see as we focal shift the curve, let's make it stronger so you can actually see what that does. We can adjust sort of the holes between, or the spaces between those holes of erosion, so we can make it look like we've got some nice denting here. So let's go ahead and adjust that so it's not quite so strong. There we go. And if I wanted to introduce a little bit more noise to this curve, you've got to be very gentle with that because a little bit goes a very, very long way. So let's set that to 0.1, 0.001. There you go, so you can add noise like that. Click OK, and then that applies to the mesh. But this is not actually geometry yet. If I want this to be a part of the sculpture, I need to click Apply to Mesh. Now, I do have the ability to smooth normals here. I'm going to leave it at this setting. I would only smooth the normals if I had really bad artifacting when I applied the noise to the mesh. I could also mask by noise. So if I click Mask by Noise, I can actually mask the surface based on the noise. I can invert the mask, and let's say I want to fill this with a color. We'll switch color and lighten this a little bit and go to RGB, color. We'll do mRGB. We'll do both. We'll do material and color. So we'll do color, fill object. And now I will control click on the background again, and I will darken this, and let's change to a material with no specular on there, the basic material. And then we will go to color, fill object. So now I filled that with a darker color and a different material. And let's go ahead and turn noise on again, and we'll see our noise. And I'm just going to click apply to mesh. And then that applies to the mesh. So if I clear my mask, you see the effect that we get. So that's actually pushing out instead of in. So let's undo that. Clear our masking. And then apply to mesh. There we go. So now we're getting it as a recess. And you see that it's a different material down there inside those chipped areas. So we can also use Noisemaker to create skin textures. So if we grab this Alien Z tool here, if we want to cover a large surface area with just a bit of noise to take away some of the perfect specular sheen, Noisemaker is a great solution for that. So let's say on this creature here, I'm going to mask out the face. I want to add just a fine noise texture to this area. I'm going to solo this tool so we're just seeing the face. And let's mask out all these areas here. Currently, my brush is actually adding mRGB, so I'm going to undo that, turn that off, and make sure that we're just on Z-Add. Hold down the Control key and just mask out these areas. I don't want it to be on the lip, so I'll unmask the lip area. And I don't want it to be on these areas here. I want these to be smoother. So what I'll do is I'll just mask all of this. And then I'll selectively unmask the areas where I don't want that noise. I'll step down a couple subdivision levels because I want to feather the edges, and I'll control click to feather the edges of my mask, then go to geometry and step back up to my highest subdivision level. Now I'm going to go to masking and turn off view mask. And go to surface and turn on noise. We'll click frame so we can actually see the model. I'm going to zoom into this. Now it's picking up the masking in reverse, so what I need to do is actually turn my masking back on and control click. So the unmasked areas are the ones where I'm going to get the noise. So we're going to go ahead and turn our strength up, adjust our noise scale. Then we'll dial our strength back a little bit, click OK, and now we've got this overall texture here. Now if I turn noise off, we can see the difference there. It might be a little too large in scale, so I'll go to Edit and I'll dial my scale back down. There we go. Click OK. And then I will apply to mesh. So that has now applied that noise texture. Clear the mask. You can see that we've got that fine surface noise applied over the whole figure. So let's say we want to create kind of an interesting, strange texture on these smooth areas. So I'll mask these out. Invert my mask, go to Noise, Edit, open up Noise Plug. And one of my favorites here is the Voronoi noise. So let me go ahead and grab that. Bring this over here. And there's Voronoi. Click OK. And Voronoi noise looks like this. When we're using Noise Plugin, we want to take Mix Basic Noise and turn it down to 0 so we're not getting anything but our plugin. And we'll take our plugin scale and turn this down. And let's turn our strength up so we can really see it. And let's dial the strength back. So the Voronoi noise gives us this interesting kind of bumpy skin texture. Voronoi noise is nice. There's also Voronoi tiles. If I go to Edit, I can go back to the Noise Plug menu. And then I'll just drag that back over onto the screen that we're on. And we'll change from Voronoi to Voronoi tiles. Voronoi tiles has a mortar there. You see it's like a sort of a tiling effect. We'll turn our plugin scale down. And we're using 3D projection here. We're not using UVs because there's no UVs on this mesh. We have to use 3D projection. If I want to change the angle, I'll just use these rotate sliders here to change the Y angle. I can change the X angle, the Z angle, until I get something that I like. If I want to change the size of the tiles themselves, I'll go into Edit, and then that will bring back our Noisemaker menu. And here I can change the mortar thickness. If I turn this up, you can see that mortar thickness starts to get bigger because I have interactive update turned on. I can change my variability here, and that'll change the variation in those mortar lines. Click OK. And then I'll click OK again. Now what I'd like to do is mask by noise. So I'm going to click Mask by Noise. Give ZBrush a moment to think about that, and it will add that noise to the surface. So what I can do now is I can go to the layer brush, for example. B for brush, L for layer, and I'll select the layer brush. And then I can hold down the Alt key. Let's make sure our Z intensity is turned down pretty low, and I can push this all down by a layer. We could double that up by going over it multiple times. If I turn off View Mask, I can actually see this effect taking place. There we go. Now I can Control-click to invert my mask, and I can smooth just those high points. There we go. And clear our masking. Now we get this real interesting surface texture just on that particular area. So it's really a fantastic tool for layering up different types of effects on your creatures and props and costumes and anything really. Noisemaker is a great solution, being able to use these sort of procedural tools to build up more complicated surfaces. So one last thing I'd like to mention about Noisemaker is it's a really good way of tiling a texture into something that has UVs. And this is especially pertinent in ZBrush 2021 because we're doing so much with cloth. And this works great for taking a tileable cloth texture and then applying that to a surface. So here I have a bit of costume, just a form-fitting shirt. And it is UV mapped. If I step down to my lowest subdivision level, we can morph UV, and you see that this does have UV coordinates applied to it. That's important to use the next tool that I want to show you. I will step up to my highest subdivision level. In this case, this will bring us up to, well, let's add another level so we're at 3 million polygons. I'll go to the surface menu and turn on noise, and we'll frame so we can see our mesh. Now, instead of using the noise in Noisemaker, I'm going to take the strength and set it to 0. I'm going to click the alpha on off button, and that's going to bring up a file browser here. And from that file browser, I will grab a tileable file texture for fabric. Zoom in here. So I have a tileable fabric tile here. So what I will do is I am going to turn up the alpha scale until we can see it. Let's turn up the strength. We need to make sure that we have the strength turned up. Mixed basic noise set to 0, so we're only seeing our alpha. So let's turn that down, 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 and then we'll turn our strength up. And there we go. So whenever it comes to fabric tiling, by the way, I always find that even when I'm doing, trying to match an existing costume, I'll often make the scale a little bit bigger, just a tiny bit bigger than what it is in reality, just to keep it from being too noisy. So here you can see we get a tileable texture applied over the surface. Let's set it to UV, and now it's truly tiling into the UV. So we will get seams wherever we have UV seams, like I believe they're right there, and there'll be a seam there. It would be more apparent if we change our alpha scale. If we turn that down, you can see the seams more effectively in that view. But the important thing is this is a very quick and easy way to take a tileable texture and then apply it to our surface. So if I click OK, this is now applied to the character. And because I actually have polygrouping on here, I could isolate. If I don't want this texture on a specific part of the model, I can hide those polygroups and then invert my mask. So it's only going to apply to the unmasked area. And then I can just click Apply to Mesh, and that will apply the texture from that tileable alpha directly to my model. So here you can see we've got that tileable texture applied to that area. Then I could invert my mask and add a different texture here. I know I've got another polygroup. If we go to, oops, I just stepped down a subdivision level. If we go to Shift F, we should be able to isolate our polygrouping here. Let's clear our masking, and I believe we've got a polygroup right there, and we do. So what I'll do here is just clean this up a little bit by stepping down, turn off frame mode. I'm going to isolate the arms here. I'm going to invert my mask, or invert my visibility, I should say, and just to speed things up, I'm going to step down a couple subdivision levels, and I'm going to go to visibility, shrink, and I can shrink based on my edge looping, so I can leave a little band there, and I will invert visibility. I'll mask all of this, unmask, step up my geometry, and you should see we have a blank area between that one surface texture and the other surface texture. So I am going to invert my mask again, and I will go to Polygroups, Group Masked, go to Frame Mode, and now you see we've got a nice sharp polygroup based on that masking. Turn off Frame Mode, and let's go back to Surface Noise. Edit, and let's go to Noise Plug, and we'll apply a different noise to the sleeves here. So let's go ahead and bring this menu over so we can see it again. So we can take, there's a variety of different presets in here. We could select a grid if we wanted to put grid on there. We've already done the hex tiles. We could select a plaid texture or a scale texture. Let's select scales. Click OK. Now I'm going to make sure Mixed Basic Noise is set to 0, and I can turn off the alpha by clicking that button, so the alpha is no longer applying, and we can change our plugin scale. Let's turn the strength up quite high so we can really see it. And we are using UV projection. So let's turn the plugin scale down so we get some little scales here. And then let's go ahead and rotate it so we can actually see this flowing in the direction we want it to flow. So let's go ahead and adjust that again. Something more along these lines here. Scale that plugin scale down. And there we go. Click OK. Well, let's check the other arm just to be sure. Make sure it looks right on both sides. And that's going to be down to the orientation of your UV islands. So click OK. And I will apply to mesh. And that should bake into the geometry. We're at 3 million faces, so there's enough to support that. Now I will clear my masking, and let's go ahead and isolate this polygroup here, this sort of band of polygrouping that we made around the perimeter of the shoulder. Go into frame mode, and we should see that polygrouping there. I will Control-Shift-Click on this orange polygroup, invert that visibility, and I really want to get this bit into that polygroup. So what I'll do is I'm going to hide everybody else. And I'll just use my visibility marquee here just to hide these bits. I may step down a subdivision level. Go to my selection lasso, and let's get that hidden. And let's invert visibility. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and go to polygroups, and I'm going to group this again. So go to polygroups, group visible, and that will tag them differently from the other set. So now I can easily select that, invert my visibility, and I will select this, and then I can group visible. So now I have a good polygroup on that. I can mask that, show all again, and then just step back up my subdivision levels. Turn off frame mode, invert visibility, Control-Alt-Click on the mask to sharpen it. Oops. Control-Alt-Click, there we go. And I can do a little bit of smoothing on that area to take away any texture that I don't want. And then if I want to just do kind of a global expand on this to create a little, a secondary panel, I can just go to deformation, inflate, and set this to, and it's going to depend. It may be as low as 1, it may be as high as 5. It depends on the scale of the object. So 1 is not too terribly bad. If we turn off masking, visibility, go back to deformation, we get a clearer look at that, and that's actually pretty good. I could undo that and then set it to 2 instead. We go to inflate. We'll set it to 1.5. There we go. So that's a bit better. And then I'll turn visibility back on my mask and then clear the mask. Now I only did that on one side, so we don't actually have it on the other. So if we undo that and go into our polyframe mode, Shift F, you can see what happened there is we actually don't have the same polygroup on the other side. So I would just have to repeat that and do it for this other side as well. So I could do that now, just for the sake of making things clean and nice. We'll step down our subdivision levels. And we want this polygroup the same on this side. So what I'll do is I'll go to B for brush, and we'll just do B for brush, S for select, and do the select lasso. Control-Shift-Click on these arms, and let's hide these. There we go, let's hide these. Hide these and these. Make sure they're the same on both sides, invert our visibility, and let's hide these. And I'm going to go to B for brush, S for select, L for lasso, and that's going to allow me to Control-Shift-Click and hide a polygroup by clicking this, polyloop by clicking this edge. So I'm going to click these edges here to hide these polyloops, and it should do that on both sides. It's got symmetry turned on. Let's get rid of those, and then I will just manually hide these groups here. And let's make sure we get that little ring there. Be careful that we haven't missed anything, and I will just go ahead and go to polygroups, group visible. And now we will step back up our subdivision levels. So let's go back up to the top level. and I'll control click on the background to mask that, control shift click to show all, and then control click on the background again. And now I want to do that offset. Be careful that you don't have any little extra bits there that you need to get rid of. And we'll do the same thing. We'll go to our deformation, inflate, and we'll set that to, we'll do 2 this time. And there we go. So we get that nice offset on that seaming there, on that little panel. So that's how we can use Noisemaker to create a tileable fabric texture on an object that has UV coordinates. Now you can lay out your UVs outside of ZBrush, or you can lay them out using UV Master. It's absolutely up to you, and we have an entire video on laying out UVs inside of ZBrush if you want to use UV Master to create your UV coordinates. So previously, it was not very easy to take a tileable texture and apply it inside of ZBrush. Interestingly enough, it took a few steps, but Noisemaker has made that much easier. It's literally just a 1-button push, and you can apply that texture. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and you found these useful tools, and I will see you in the next lesson.